Before we begin, I'd just like to mention that while I will try to cover most of the important rules of the game, this will not be a fully comprehensive tutorial, but is rather meant to introduce the most important aspects for you to be able to start a game as soon as possible. The following tutorial only includes the base game of Terraforming Mars. Terraforming Mars is a digital adaptation of the science fiction tabletop game of the same name designed by Jacob Frixelius. This adaptation was developed and published by Asmodee Digital. In Terraforming Mars, you and other players will, terraform Mars together, playing as corporations competing who can contribute the most in both the terraforming process and the construction of infrastructures in the solar system. The goal in Terraforming Mars is to score the most victory points at the end of the game. Victory points represent your overall contribution and can be acquired through various means, which we will get to later. And the game ends once the terraforming process is complete. The process is considered complete when three parameters, represented here on the main screen, are met. 1. If the oxygen level of the planet has been raised to 14%. 2. If the temperature has been raised to 8 degrees Celsius. And 3. If 9 ocean tiles have been placed on the map. The game is played in a series of rounds called generations, which is indicated here on the top right side of the screen. And each generation is divided in 3 phases: research phase, action phase, and production phase. Before we get into the actions of the game, first we'll need to explain resources. Your resources can be found on the bottom left side of the screen here. Each icon represents a different type of resource, and the number on or beside the icons represent how much you have of each resource at the moment that can be used. The resources are mega credits, steel, titanium, plants, energy, and heat. Each resource has its own use, but we'll get to that later when they become relevant. The number on the top of each, on the other hand, represents your production for each resource. Every generation you'll gain these amounts for each resource, and a huge portion of the game will be spent increasing the production of these resources. For example, in this scenario, if the current generation were to end, we will gain 1 of each resource. There is no maximum number for any of these resources, and they cannot go lower than 0, except for mega credits, which can go as low as -5. Another thing that's important to keep track of is your terraform rating. You can find the terraform rating of all players here on the left side of the screen. This is a number representation of the contribution that each player has made to the terraforming process. Contributing to the 3 parameters mentioned earlier will increase your terraform rating. If you're able to raise the temperature by 1, for example, through any means, your terraform rating will increase by 1 as well. The number counts towards your victory points at the end of the game, and represents your mega credits production for the next generation. For example, if we had the terraform rating of 20, after the end of this generation, we'll receive 20 mega credits in addition to our mega credits production. If a parameter is at its maximum, doing actions that should increase it will not increase it any further, and provide no increase to your terraform rating as well. During this phase, you and your opponents will take turns doing 1 to 2 actions until everyone has passed. Once you've passed without performing any actions, you won't be able to perform any actions for the rest of the generation. On the left side of the screen here, it will be indicated whose turn it is, and how many actions they have left. In this case, it is currently our turn, and we have yet to do any actions. The first action we'll explain is playing a card. You can view your hand of cards by clicking on the bottom of the screen here. If a card is grayed out, this means that you don't have the requirements or the resources to play the card, and there are several things to consider when playing a card. On the upper left side of each card, you'll find their mega credits cost. Mega credits is the main currency of the game and is needed to initiate almost all actions. As mentioned earlier, you can find your current mega credits here, which is 42 in this case. The second thing to consider when playing a card are their requirements. You can find a card's requirements, if they have any, on a red banner above the card. For example, this card requires at least 3 ocean tiles placed on the map for us to be able to play it. And checking our parameters, we can see that we currently only have 1 ocean tile in play, so we won't be able to play this card until 3 ocean tiles have been placed. If you're unsure what a particular symbol on a card means, you can always click on them to read a detailed description of the card. There are different types of cards represented by their color, and each color comes with a different kind of effect when played. Red cards are events that provide a one-time effect. For example, this card allows you to place 1 ocean tile and draw 1 card. Green cards provide resources and increase the production of those resources as well. For instance, the solar wind power card increases our energy production by 1 and gives us 2 titanium as well. Blue cards provide either an ongoing ability that carries over generations, an ability that needs to be activated to gain its benefits, or both. For example, the Space Mirrors card will provide an extra action that when activated allows you to spend 7 mega credits to increase your energy production by 1. You can find your current ongoing abilities here on the lower right side of the main screen. Actions refer to the abilities that need to be activated to gain their benefits. The icons on the left side of the arrow represents the cost for activating the ability, while the icons on the right side of the arrow represent the benefits. As an example, our only available action in this scenario allows us to trade 4 energy for 2 steel, and an increase in the oxygen level of the planet. Effects, on the other hand, refer to passive ongoing abilities. Some of these usually require a trigger to gain the benefit. For example, this ongoing ability we have gives us 3 mega credits and 3 heat every time we play an event with a space tag. We'll explain tags in a second, but as always, if you're unsure what the icons mean, you can hover your cursor over each ability to see what they do. If a resource icon appears on a card, this means that once the card has been paid for and played, you immediately gain these resources. And you will see this benefit reflected immediately in your resource table. If a resource icon appears with a brown border, this represents the resource's production. If a resource appears with a minus symbol, this represents a deduction of either the resource itself or its production if it has a brown border. Some icons will appear with a red border as well. This signifies that the effect is for an opponent of your choosing. And just a reminder, if some symbols seem unclear, you can always click on a card to read what it does. Before continuing with other card effects, I'd like to mention that increasing the parameters at certain levels will provide some bonuses. For example, whoever raises the temperature to negative 24 degrees will gain an additional production of heat. Some card effects will refer to circular icons called tags. For instance, the Worms card will provide an additional plant production for every 2 microbe tags you have. Tags can be found on the upper right side of cards. They don't provide any benefits on their own, but some cards will refer to and depend on them. Each card you play will provide tags to your company, and you can find your current tags and the number of each that you have here on the main screen. Take note that some resources can be used to pay for cards with certain tags. Each steel resource can be used as 2 mega credits when playing a card with a building tag. And titanium can be used as 3 mega credits when paying for cards with a space tag. Some cards also provide victory points, represented by this icon, that are added to your total score at the end of the game. You can find your current number of victory points from cards here on the bottom right side of the screen. This number has no limit either, and can be a negative number, in which case will be deducted from your score at the end of the game. Some cards will require you to accumulate a certain type of resource on the card itself, either for an ongoing effect or an active ability. For example, the Nitrite Reducing Bacteria card has 2 abilities. You can either place 1 microbe on the card, or you can remove 3 microbes from the card to increase your Terraform rating by 1. If you have cards like this in play, you can find them here in Card Resources. You'll be able to see active cards of this nature, and to their right, you'll find what type of resource they require and how many are on them at the moment. Aside from playing cards, you can also fund standard projects as an action. You can find these projects here on the top of the screen, and they can be performed multiple times in a single generation as long as you can pay for them. Selling patents will allow you to get rid of cards from your hand, receiving 1 mega credit for each card discarded this way. You use this action when you have cards that don't seem as useful anymore, or if you're in dire need of mega credits. Building a power plant will increase your energy production by 1 for 11 mega credits. Choosing the asteroid project will increase the temperature of Mars, and therefore your terraform rating as well, by 1 for 14 mega credits. The aquifer, greenery, and city projects will respectively allow you to place an ocean, greenery, and city tile on the map. The map of the game is presented in a hexagonal grid. Each hex represents a space where ocean, greenery, and city tiles can be placed following a few restrictions. When placing a tile, all available spaces will be highlighted to help show what your options are. Placing a tile on a space with icons will immediately provide you with what the icons represent, whether it's resources or cards. For example, placing a tile here will give me 2 cards. Spaces with names are reserved for specific tiles that can only be built with specific cards. For example, this card will allow us to build a city in Phobos Space Haven, and cards like this usually comes with an additional effect. In this case, we will gain an additional titanium production. City tiles cannot be built adjacent to other city tiles unless a specific card allows you to. Once played, they will have a colored border indicating ownership. In this case, we are the blue player and this is our city, so it has a blue border. Greenery tiles must be placed next to another tile that you own, if possible. If not possible, you may place the tile on any other available area. Placing a greenery tile will increase the planet's oxygen level, and, in turn, increases our terraform rating. At the end of the game, you will score 1 point for each greenery tile you own, and additional victory points for each greenery tile, regardless of ownership, adjacent to your city tiles. For example, here, I have a greenery tile adjacent to 2 of my city tiles. If it were time to score, I would score 1 point for this city, and another point for this city, as they both have one greenery tile adjacent to them. Ocean tiles do not have any owners, and can only be placed in the blue spaces. Just to remind you, placing ocean tiles is one of the parameters that needs to be completed to end the game, so it will also increase your terraform rating by 1. And placing any tile next to ocean tiles, even another ocean tile, will give that player 2 mega credits. For example, if we place the city tile next to these 2 ocean tiles, we will receive 4 mega credits. Some resources also provide actions when a certain amount has been collected. Spending 8 plants will allow you to place a greenery tile following the same restrictions, and spending 8 heat will allow you to increase the temperature, and therefore your terraforming rating as well, by 1. Another action you can do is to claim a milestone here on the top side of the screen. Each milestone costs 8 mega credits, and will provide 5 points at the end of the game for being the first to accomplish a task. For example, the Terraformer milestone requires a player to have at least 35 terraform rating before it can be claimed. You can hover your cursor over each one to see what they require. Each milestone can only be claimed once, only one of 3 of the 5 milestones can be claimed as indicated here, and a player may claim multiple milestones. Awards, on the other hand, don't have requirements for them to be funded as an action. If funded, they give points at the end of the game to the players who win the indicated category. For example, the Landlord Award will give points to the player who owns the most tiles on the map at the end of the game. And again, you can hover your cursor over each award to see what the categories are and your standing for each. Like milestones, only 3 awards can be funded and each award can only be funded once. Any player can fund an award, and players can fund multiple awards costing 8, 14, and 20 mega credits for the first, second, and third award respectively. At the end of the game, if in a 2-player game, 5 points will be awarded to the winner, and in a 3 to 4-player game, an additional 2 points will be awarded to players in second place of each funded category. In case of a tie for second place, all tied players will be awarded the 2 points. And in case of a tie for first place, all tied players will get 5 points, with no second place being awarded if in a 3 or 4-player game. After every player has passed, you'll move on to the production phase where the game will automatically supply you with resources based on your production. And the turn order will rotate, with the current second player becoming next round's first player. At the start of each generation, you'll be presented with 4 cards. These are cards that you can choose to buy to add to your hand at the cost of 3 mega credits each. You can buy 0 to 4 cards, and there is no limit to the number of cards you can have in your hand. At the start of the game, you'll be given the choice of which corporation you'd like to play as. Each corporation will give you additional starting resources and an ongoing ability exclusive to you. For example, if we choose the Interplanetary Cinematics Corporation, we will start the game with 20 steel and 30 additional mega credits, and its ongoing effect is every time we play an event card, which are represented by this downward arrow tag, we will gain 2 mega credits. After all 3 parameters have been met, temperature, oxygen, and ocean tiles, players finish playing the current generation, after which, all players are given the chance to convert their remaining plants into greenery tiles before scoring commences. To reiterate, victory points come from several things: your terraform rating, awards, milestones, tiles on the map, and cards. The points players get from all these will be summed up at the end, and the player with the most points win. In case of a tie, the player with the most remaining mega credits among the tied players win. Once you're already familiar with the game's mechanisms, to mix up your games and make them more interesting, the base game of Terraforming Mars provides two variants. The draft variant decreases the randomness of card acquisition in the research phase by having players choose which cards they'd like to have as options to buy. Each player will still be given 4 cards, but instead of immediately choosing which cards to buy, you'll first select a card to keep, passing the other cards to another player, and then receiving a different set of 3 cards from a different player, which again you'll choose one from to keep, and repeating the process until you have 4 cards to buy from. With the corporate era rules, you will start the game with no production for all resources, and more cards will be added to the game to add some variety. As mentioned at the start of the game, this isn't a fully comprehensive tutorial. The game comes with a lot of cards that can do a lot of different things, especially with the corporate era rules variant. Regardless, the information provided should be enough for you to be able to start a game knowing what you can do, what you'd like to do, and how you will go about doing those things. Thanks for watching.